LinkedIn presents.
The barrage of endless media and political news in the U.S. is stressing everyone out. But what if being in the eye of the storm is your job? I'm Morra Aarons-Mele, and this is The Anxious Achiever, the show that looks at the intersection of mental health and work and how we can do both better.
The LinkedIn Podcast Network is sponsored by Oracle. AI may be the most important new computer technology ever. Do more and spend less like some of the world's most successful companies. Take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/LinkedIn Podcast Network.
You know those spans of time where an hour feels like a day and a day feels like a week and a week feels like a month and a month feels like a year? I don't know about you, but the current election cycle feels like that to me and for today's guest. In just the span of a week, we went from an assassination attempt on one candidate to the historic decision of another candidate to back out of the race just a few months before the general election for president of the U.S. The stakes feel high, really high for the country, and it can make it really hard to focus at work, to give you the energy you need for your family and your daily life, and for a lot of us to try to have hope for what lies ahead. So for this episode, we're going inside the Beltway to talk to someone who has spent her whole career dealing with the anxiety that comes with working in politics. Shaniqua McClendon is Vice President of Politics at Crooked Media, a liberal political organization, and I spoke with her right after the news about President Joe Biden no longer seeking re-election broke. We'll get her take on the current cycle, but also Shaniqua's lessons from her past experiences in pressure cooker environments. We'll hear about times when she felt like she was the underdog, but kept fighting for what she believed in, and how she keeps hope alive and takes care of her own mental health. I think even those of us who are used to the news cycle being 24 hours a day are reeling a little bit right now. Yeah. What do you do? You're a political veteran at this point.
I will take that.
What is your personal practice for maintaining any sense of perspective and calm in the swirl? And you work in media, so you've got like the double whammy of working in politics and media. How do you do it? Have you learned?
This probably isn't healthy. I just kind of keep going. You know, I literally said to someone, well, I'm glad I got COVID when I did, because now I can just power through November, which is not healthy. And I mean, it's very possible for me to get COVID again before November, which I will try my best not to. But I mean, my practices, which I know is unhealthy, is like during election years, I'm just all plugged in. And then in odd years, I try to take vacations and not be, as plugged in, but that's been really hard since Donald Trump got elected, because even when there's not a big election happening in that moment, there's just always something. I think about January 6th, 2021, we had just had this long campaign. It bled over into 2021 because of the runoffs in Georgia. Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock win on January 5th. And the next morning I wake up, I'm excited, we've taken the Senate. And then January 6th, the attack on the Capitol happens. And I'm just looking at the TV like, we will never, ever, ever get a break, will we? It just, keeps going. So in odd years, I try to take as much time and space as I can. But I do have vacation planned in a couple of weeks. So just got to get it in where it fits in.
So you just keep powering through.
Yeah. And again, it's not healthy. The number of times I've fallen asleep on the couch, I fell asleep on the couch on Thursday. And so every time I woke up, MSNBC just had Trump's speech on like a loop. And every time I woke up, it was at a different part of the speech. I don't know why I didn't just go get in the bed.
Some of the themes that we're talking about on the show this season, in addition to managing anxiety and mental health, are around hope and around passion for your work and around burnout. So
those things all go together.
Well, okay, this is the thing. Why did you say that? Tell me what you mean.
I absolutely love my job. Working in politics is one of those things where most people don't get into it just to clock in and clock out every day. They typically really care about whatever they're doing. And I really, really care about this job. and the impact that it has. But I also really like this job. And so I always tell people I couldn't try any hard drugs because I just have like an addictive personality and I just like go all the way in. And that's what it's been, my whole career. But as the stakes have felt higher since Trump has been in the political landscape, I felt more committed. I had go through a lot of burnout and I was experiencing that in the lead up to this week with everything that kept happening. But I have to say, Kamala Harris being the presumptive nominee, I am so excited to help get her elected. And I know that that's going to take a lot of work and energy out of me, but your body doesn't know the difference between good and bad reasons that you are burnt out. So, it always catches up with you. But as I'm getting older, I do need to like seriously, regardless of whether it's a good fight or something that's, heavy and burdensome, I need to be more conscious of the toll that it's taking on me. But the reason I said that is because that's typically how you get there. If I hated my job, I'd clock in, I'd do it, and I'd go home. There wouldn't be all the extra stuff that lends itself to burnout.
So I had a Harvard researcher on, Jan Yachimovitz, and he has done studies that show that people who feel passion for their work are actually more likely to be in a state of intense burnout. Because just what you said, we really feel it. And so when we're in a good state on a day like today, we don't take breaks.
No.
We just keep working. And because we tend to gravitate towards workplaces that exploit that a little bit.
I know.
And I was reflecting my own time in politics
Mm-hmm.
and how it felt like it was just a room of us sort of anxious achievers who just like, we really cared, but we also really cared about what people thought about us. And we had so much to prove.
Mm-hmm.
And we could have been in really unkind, abusive environments. And sometimes I was, and we stayed.
Yes. Same. Same. I mean, yeah.
We're not talking about your current employer. Like,
oh, no, not at all. But what I will say is I remember I was working really late one night on the Hill and I got a call from someone more superior than me at 11:30 at night. I was still in the office at 11:30 at night and they were upset about something. And so then I had to listen to them be upset about something for 30 minutes. And then I had to finish the speech I was working on for the next day. And so I think the other part of this is people who, like me, was the employee or the subordinate in that space, like everyone's there for the same reason. So they are like commanding excellence.
mm-hmm.
And sometimes that becomes the only thing they're focused on and not that there's a person on the other side of it. And I will say that in my role now that I have a team, I'm always really trying to be focused on not exploiting them and being that person, because I know that when they're on vacation, if I ask for something, they'll get it to me. But, I'm the one now who's like, no, why are you talking to me? You're on vacation. Like, stop talking to me. This is against the rules, because I don't want to put them through, what I had to go through. And I just know it's not healthy, and so I don't want them to end up like me, stressed out. I mean, in 2019, I developed acid reflux, and I know it was from stress. At the beginning of this year, my hair was shedding like crazy. And, I've like been getting shots in my head at the dermatologist so that my hair will grow back. And so I don't want other people to have to feel and experience that. And the funny thing is, I mean, I like it's filled in now, but I had like a bald spot in here.
Wow.
And the reason that was so just like jarring to me is point blank, I, had a random bald spot. But in 2018, the same thing happened to my boss. She was so stressed that she was losing her hair. And then I was like, how did I get to the same point when I saw that happen to her? I know it happened. And that's how I knew I was going to get shots, because she was like, yeah, they gave me shots in my head and my hair grew back. And so I don't want to like repeat this cycle for the people who work for me. And I know I can't fully control it because like me, they're going to do what they want to do, but anything I can do to lessen it.
I will tell you that I have heard many stories from women over the past few years who have had chunks of hair falling out and how stressful it is for us as women, you know, because it's you're a very young person.
Hair mends.
Exactly. So I first want to say that that's stress on top of stress, right?
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about your own relationship with anxiety and how you feel that's shown up in healthy and unhealthy ways in your amazing career.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to talk a little bit about getting your advice as a leader, as a political veteran, as someone who knows anxiety, on how we all can think about keeping some sort of locus of control as we get towards the election, how we
Yeah.
can like try not to lose it in the swirl and the sort of existential nature of it all.
Yeah.
If I asked you, what's your relationship with your anxiety like, what would you say?
Yes. I feel at this point in my life a lot more in control of it. Like I recognize it now. Before, I just thought they were feelings and I just had these feelings. And, I know I convinced myself because I had good grades in school. Like I was always doing well and getting accolades and, even my parents just being really excited and happy and getting praise for doing well. And so then that made me really anxious about accomplishing things. But, when everyone's telling you, oh, this is great, you just lean into that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought I was just being, a student who excelled, someone who excelled in my career, not recognizing that a lot of what was driving me was this fear of failure, this fear of not being good enough, and this fear that I would let people down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm now at a point where I feel that I'm more focused on like, what do I want to accomplish? And does my anxiety still come up? Absolutely. But now when it comes up, I know what it is. Like, yesterday, I was excited about, Kamala Harris. And I think for the next few months, that's going to be what's driving me. But if I start to feel something of, if I fail and don't do as well as we did in 2020, does that mean something bad's going to happen? When those kinds of thoughts come up, I can recognize those have nothing to do with Kamala Harris and they are all related to my anxiety showing up. There's like two parts to me. I think consciously, I'm like, failure happens to everyone. I've actually learned a lot in failure, but even still, I'm still like deeply, deeply afraid of it. I mean, even now, something I think about is if I lost my job, like where would I go? I guess I could go live with my sister. But why am I thinking about that? Like I'm doing well at work. I have, a rainy day fund. I think I could find a new job if something crazy happened, but I just always play out these scenarios and I'm like, I can't be in whatever that position is. So I have to like, focus on this, which lends itself to control issues. And so I wouldn't say I've like figured it all out or fixed it, but being able to recognize it and then ask myself questions. One of my old therapists, something she would say do is once you identify what it is, keep asking the why and peel it away until you get to that. And normally by the time I got to it, it's like, oh, this has nothing to do with that. This is about this. And then, Shaniqua, is this really that bad? And is it a realistic outcome? And that has helped me tremendously.
Tell us about, you said you're better at sort of acknowledging and saying, this isn't about Kamala Harris. This is about me and my anxious thoughts. What do you do in the moment to sort of manage through?
Yeah. Once I get to the core of it, I'm kind to myself, kinder, but I can say, Shaniqua, this is not something you should actually be concerned about
Mm-hmm.
and step away from it. But something I realized is I didn't have the time to do that before. And I think that's why I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
really address it. At the height of COVID, I lived in LA. I would go on walks in the morning because, that was kind of my outside time. And I've maintained doing that. And so I'll walk, depending on how much time I have in the morning, between 2, 3, sometimes 4 miles. And that is when I really have my time to clear my head because the anxious thoughts will get going and then I'll have a second to pause and I'll have enough time to keep going until I get to the core of whatever is driving it. And then I'm okay. But before I wasn't giving myself enough time to get to the core of what's driving it. And then once you figure out the patterns, you can kind of get to what's at the core a little quicker.
I love that you also have the discipline and the courage to keep going versus a lot of us would put a podcast on or check Instagram or, not walk.
There's something about walking. I used to run. I started running in 2020. I hate running. I hated it then and I still hate it now. And it did help with my anxiety because like running, it just like takes it all out of you. But because I hated running so much, it was hard for me to think. I was just thinking about when will this run be over? So it was more of a distraction than processing. And then I did some research and I was just like, because I hate running, like, can walking get me the cardio that I need? And, it's not the same way. And you have to like walk more to get the same benefits. But by and large, a cardiovascular system is worked out. And I was able to think more. And so that's where now I use the walking. And even today, I knew today was going to be busy. I had a 9 a.m. meeting that was about 15 minutes away from my apartment driving. And I was like, okay, I have to get up early so I can go on my walk. And it's just been really important to have that is something I can control, where a lot of things with anxiety you can't. And so just investing more in the things I can control that can manage it is what I tend to do.
Have you learned to think about specific sort of things that trigger you in the course of a day or that show up in your work life and how to manage those?
That's a good question. I mean, I probably have, but I don't think I've deeply assessed, well, I've assessed the people who trigger me and their behavior, but I don't think I really, like, when I feel overwhelmed and there's just a lot that I have to do, I need a list and a plan. I don't have to get it done, but I have found that once I have a plan of attack, then I'm fine. And so now my to-do list is like I just have it up. Whenever something comes in my head, I put it there, I check it, I get my things done. And if it's a big problem, I'll sit there and just think through it. Again, it's usually not about getting the thing done. It's me not knowing how I'm going to get it done that stresses me out and makes me really anxious. And so if I can have a plan, that is great. Now, when a lot of other people are involved, having a plan gets a lot more difficult. And I have not figured that part out yet. That's also something that adds to my burnout because I'll just try to take as much of it on as possible. Not because I want to be the hero, but because if I'm taking more of it on, I can kind of game plan more of it and not have to rely on others because you cannot control other people. And
Nope.
that is something I know in my head, but do not feel in my heart. And so I have to get there.
That's really funny. I'm curious if you ever use the passion or the values that underlie why you do this work when you're feeling like you're in a tough spot.
Yeah, but I don't think I always do it in a healthy way. Sometimes it's my excuse for not sleeping. I mean, even yesterday, the coffee shop by me, I don't even like coffee, but I've been drinking a lot more caffeine this year. And the coffee place by me the earliest one opens at 7 a.m. But I knew that I was going to have an early day. And so I needed to start my walk as soon as it was light outside. So I got a coffee yesterday and I put it in the refrigerator. And then I was able to, leave around 5:50 this morning to go on my walk. And I had the caffeine because I wouldn't have been able to get it otherwise. Again, the core of that was I have to be productive today. I know it's going to be a busy day, but like that's not healthy, to be planning that far in advance. So I think my passion for the work sometimes is my excuse to not be taking care of myself as much as I should. And yeah, I need to probably unpack that and work on it.
I mean, devil's advocate is like you were taking care of yourself with the coffee and the
That's true.
walk, and
That's true.
this is probably a day that might go down. And I mean, so sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm
That's
not being
true.
so bad.
Well, you see, I am always hard on myself, and I couldn't even spin that into a positive thing. My therapist once told me, she's like, Shaniqua, you're in an ivory tower looking down on yourself. This is my therapist from like 2016. And that has just stuck with me because it's true.
What were you doing in politics in 2016?
I was working on Capitol Hill. I was a legislative director. It was right before I was going to graduate school.
Explain what a legislative director is for people who don't.
Yes. So on Capitol Hill, members of Congress, they have, staff, but the largest team on that staff is the legislative staff. And those are the people who work on, the policy work. And so it's from drafting legislation to meeting with groups who care about the issues that you cover. Legislative staff have portfolios that have a range of issues. And so I was her legislative director, which means my portfolio included the issues that were most important to her, where she was on the committee. Education was her top issue. She was an educator for 20 years. And so I had that portfolio, and they have hearings every week. So you have to prepare them for the hearings with questions and research, but then also meet with a lot of the organizations who care about these issues. And so that was one part of my job. But the other part was managing the rest of the legislative team who also had issue areas. So the job in itself was stressful, and you do not get leadership training on the Hill. You're really just managing the work. And now I realize that I did not develop those people that I was managing in the way that I developed my team now. But yeah, that's what I was doing in 2016. Someone above me created a really not great work environment where if I didn't play I don't want to say play the role, we were friends, but if I was not a friend outside of the office, I would suffer for it in the office. So it's kind of like having an extra job. And so it was a really stressful time in my life. And so, I was in therapy then. And I thought grad school was going to be a break, but soon learned that that is a crazy thing to think.
Why did you think grad school was going to be a break?
I thought Capitol Hill was so hard. You work your normal 8 hours, but then you have the events after work. You have a member of Congress who doesn't care about time. If they have to work around the clock, you're also going to have to work around the clock. And I did my best. And this is something that shows up wherever I am. If I'm managing people, I try to be the barrier between them and whatever's above me, because they probably don't make enough to be dealing with that. And I've been given this responsibility, so I want to protect them as much as I can. And so the Hill was just really hard. And I thought, I've done school before. Undergrad, I made it through that, and I had a lot less life experience. So I made grad school hard. I mean, the classes were, the Kennedy School is really quant focused. And so those were enough. But I had this whole plan. I told myself, I'm not getting involved in anything. I'm not going to be the president of anything. I'm just going to do my schoolwork and network. And then my first month there, I was like, my class is not diverse. Like, we had 240 people in my class, 4 Black women, and only 2 of them were even, born in the US, and being one of them. And so,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, first month at school, I'm in the dean's office hours, like, hey, this is not okay, which led to a bunch of student organizing that, wasn't easy. My time at the Kennedy School was not easy. And by the end of it, I kind of had a target on my back because a lot of my well-meaning classmates wanted to support me. But because some of the stuff we were doing, we didn't want to have anyone's name tied to. They were kind of in the background. And then I was kind of put up as the face of everything. And so it just made me the person that when people were upset, they were upset with me. And so it was rough. I don't regret getting engaged in that. So, I mean, even I wasn't supposed to be president of anything. The Black Student Union, there weren't enough Black students to fill all the leadership positions. So it just, yeah.
The LinkedIn Podcast Network is sponsored by Oracle. AI may be the most important new computer technology ever, but AI needs a lot of processing speed, and that gets expensive fast. Upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. Do more and spend less. Take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/LinkedIn Podcast Network.
If you're interested in the story behind the business headlines, check out Big Technology Podcast, my weekly show that features in-depth interviews with CEOs, researchers, and reformers in business and technology. Hi, I'm Alex Kantrowitz. I'm a longtime journalist, CNBC contributor, and the host of the show. I empty my Rolodex every Wednesday to bring you awesome episodes, so go check out Big Technology Podcast. It's available on all podcast apps. Would love to have you as a listener.
I recall something you wrote that was about fixing the Kennedy School.
Oh, yes. That was the title of it. That was a paper that I had to write for Khalil Muhammad's class. I'm going to mess up the title of it, but it was like American Race, Democracy, and Inequality.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole premise of the class was American democracy was built on the exclusion of Black people. And so we had to write this paper. And I mean, I've taken paper seriously before, but this paper, I had Post-its all around my room. I just had all these thoughts I wanted to get out. And when he initially gave us the assignment, it was 2,500 words max. And I just kept thinking, how am I going to get to 2,500 words? And then, of course, I'm well over it and I had to cut it down. So the editing process helped me get a really good paper together. And then I cut it down even more to get it published in the African American Policy Journal. I mean, I learned a lot of stuff there. But if I learned anything, it was all the good and bad parts of the Kennedy School. And yeah, I think there was space for it to improve. And even though I didn't get to see a lot of those improvements while I was there, the students that came after my class, we talked to them about what we had done. So they weren't starting from scratch. They were able to make some change. And the thing that I was really focused on, my belief was the Kennedy School is a school of government. If we're educating the next generation of political leaders, policymakers, then they should have an understanding of the role that race and racism plays in our policy creation. And so that's what I was pushing for in the curriculum. And faculty were telling me that I was attacking their academic autonomy and authority. And faculty got us together because they wanted to have a meeting. I mean, we were being very like public with our agitation. And so we're having this meeting, and one of them says, well, why don't you just advocate for more race and ethnic studies courses? And I was just like, are you listening to us? Like, that's the problem, that this has been siloed. There were really key people who I would have gone crazy if I didn't have their support while I was there, because those were not the easiest 2 years of my life. So to your question, I don't know why I thought grad school would be easy. And then I made it harder. So it was not a break. And then Donald Trump won my first semester there. So
I'm curious what that experience, I mean, Harvard is one of the biggest bureaucracies in the country.
yeah.
Storied brand, all the things that make it hard to drive
Yeah.
change, as we've seen this year.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn about power and institutional power that has shaped how you lead now?
Yeah, I learned that sometimes you have to do really hard things, and you have to be brave enough to just put yourself out there and say the things that make people unhappy and uncomfortable. I am a Black woman, so that diminishes, the peak of the privilege I can have in this world. But I've gone to great schools, and I've met a lot of people that have definitely given me, a lot more privilege than other people, but especially other Black people. And I saw that as a responsibility. I learned that it's not easy. And that's why I get frustrated when I see people just tweeting about everything that's wrong with politics and they're not engaging, because it just really ignores what it takes to even get power. And I mean, I will not be naive and say that we, acquired enough to dismantle all the problems at the Kennedy School, but we did enough that the dean, whenever I wanted to talk to him, I spoke to him. I attended some faculty meetings, which I don't know that they were happy about, but, I had some people helping me find out when and where they were so we could go in there and share student experiences. And again, even though I didn't get to see the changes I wanted to see while I was there, we organized with the students who came in. New admit day, there was a diversity reception. We targeted those students to let them know we wanted them there, but we want to be clear about what you're walking into as a marginalized person. Again, I'm sure there are still things to improve, but a lot of changes have happened at the Kennedy School that have been really good. And I learned that, no one's going to let go of power. You're going to have to work really hard to get even a sliver of it. But it is worth it, because if the students who came after me got to have a better experience than I did, then that alone is worth it.
It's funny. I was going to ask you about the role of hope. That's another theme that we're talking about on the show this season. Why humans need hope, and especially those of us who are prone to having anxiety, we especially need to be able to physically tap into hope. You've worked in a political period that I would imagine saw both surges of hope and absolute teetering on despair. The past, 15 years? What's the role of hope in keeping you going and managing your energy, your anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's pretty central to it. I'd say I'm fortunate that the thing that got me interested in politics and just creating change in general were good experiences. I grew up in a low-income household, single mother. I have two sisters. I have a twin sister, which made, whatever we wanted to do was double the price. And education was something that always just like afforded me opportunity. I did well in school, and it created space for me to do really cool things. And then when I got to UNC, that continued to be the case. And then Barack Obama ran for president and won my senior year. And that just really, it gave me so much hope. When I started at UNC, one of my first real vivid memories that I do think played a huge role in me getting into politics was watching the television, and Hurricane Katrina was happening, and watching Black people on the screen beg for the government to help them. And, being characterized as looters because they needed, resources and things to live, and not seeing that characterization of, white citizens that were doing the exact same thing. So that was the beginning. I don't even think class had started then. And I was standing in front of the TV just crying, because it was the first time I really got to see the connection between people's lived experiences and the governments that are supposed to lead in these moments. And then, also while I was in school, I dealt with some challenges around my name being Shaniqua. When I ran for the SM president, there was an article in the paper. You didn't have to sign in or anything to comment. And a lot of racist comments under there. Our student body president was murdered while I was in school.
Oh my God.
Yeah, some kids who, got access to a gun. Yeah, it was a lot. And then by the time I graduated, the '08 financial crisis, college, college is transformative for most people, but all the external stuff that was happening contributed to it. And so Barack Obama literally did feel like a beacon of light. It felt like we can really change all of this bad stuff that has happened. And so that's what really pushed me into this. And I'm fortunate that it did. And between education providing so many opportunities and then, Barack Obama and seeing what he was promising for the future, and then getting to intern at the White House in the student correspondence office. So just getting to read about a bunch of other people's educational experiences, which at the time were not great, but was just a reminder that we can do things and we can make change. And so as bad as things get, I think because my starting point was Barack Obama, it's hard not to have hope. I think that is, for me, the role that hope plays, because it's why I'm here. It's, I drank the Obama Kool-Aid, and honestly, Vote Save America for me is that, because I feel like we can give other people hope that they can do something. Our whole thing is the news sucks. It's bad, but you want to do something about it, we will tell you what you can do about it. And I think that's why we just had so much participation, because people have trusted us that that's the case over the past 6 years that Vote Save America has existed. And they can see the outcome. They got involved. And has it been perfect since, 2016? No, but we've done great things. And then yesterday was just another reminder that 6,000 people signed up for our volunteer program yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah. So hope is important. And I know a lot of people were upset that there were calls for Biden to step down and that we should just focus on the policies and the stakes. But at the end of the day, hope inspires people. And that's what a lot more people had this morning, more than they did yesterday when they woke up.
I think it's also a reminder that a lot of times we're scared to make bold changes that feel chaotic because we think that people will be confused or feel overwhelmed. But that when the change feels like it's a jab at hope, people accept the confusion.
Yeah. Because you feel like there's something really good on the other side of this.
Yes. You take a risk.
And it's worth the risk. The consequences of the vice president not winning this election are very, very high. And so take what I am saying with a huge grain of salt. No, don't take it with a grain of salt. I mean it. I'm going to do everything I can to get her elected. But if she's not elected, I will not regret putting every ounce of energy I had into it, because I can see the hope on the other side of this. And honestly, even if she did lose, I'll be sad, but I'll get up and fight another day, because I know it's possible. There was a time, my grandmother did not think we'd ever have a Black president while she was alive, and it happened for 8 years. And she was born in 1936. So maybe I'm cheesy. Hope is just always going to be the thing that keeps me going.
No, it's scientifically proven we need it. What I'm about to ask you might feel a little bit pathetic, but I'm going to ask it anyway after that. What would you say to people like me, frankly? I'm an ex-political consultant. I think that a lot of us, especially those of us who have a lot of passion, we feel really overwhelmed by this existential threat and a little bit frozen in the sense of we have to stop our lives and do everything we can because, oh my God, what will happen? What's your advice for someone who has a lot of responsibility, who wants to give a positive contribution, but is also just feeling a little bit overwhelmed and anxious by the weight of the moment and the sense that they aren't going to do enough?
Yeah. It's somewhere in one of our fundraising decks, but we have a line in there that's this is our day job. Let us take care of this stuff for you. And so I'm being biased in what I'm about to say, but that is why we have modeled Vote Save America in the way we have. We meet people where they are and say, whatever you can do, do that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I met with a donor a few weeks ago, and he's got a busy life. I mean, he lives between here and another country. And he said, I really love all the work you all are doing. I just don't have the time to volunteer and do all this stuff. And so, that's why I give my money. So that's what he can do. Other people have time. And if you don't have time or money, you're probably on social media and you can just amplify the messages that we're sharing. We just launched this broadcast channel on Instagram. Last time I checked, we had like 4,500 people in it. And we just give them information to push out so that the message goes further than we would be able to get it to go by ourselves. And so really, there's no point, as I just said, all the stuff about how I need to give myself a break. But, do as I say, not as I do. There's no point in exerting yourself beyond repair. There are ways for people to get involved, and you don't have to drop everything. If you want to, that's a choice you can make, but there's so many things you can do in between dropping everything to, go work in politics and run for office, and between that and doing nothing. There's so much.
My last question is this. How do you give yourself the grace knowing that you just said you want to give this your all?
Yeah.
To accept sometimes that things are beyond your control. And at the end of the day, there's no one who can control who wins. There's no one who can control climate. There are things that are just beyond any group of people's control.
I actually have a notepad of 2 pages of notes I want to talk to my team about. And I'm going to, be mindful of we can't control everything, but everything I wrote on that notepad were the things we can control.
Yeah.
I talked about the walks I go on, and when I just keep kind of peeling the onion to get to the core of what's driving this anxiety. Normally, I get to the core of it, and then I ask myself, can you control that, Shaniqua? And the answer is typically no. And then I say, what can you control? And so a lot of my notes are how can we improve our programs to get more people to sign up, and then get more of the people who do sign up to actually take action? Mm-hmm. I think given yesterday's news, we won't struggle with that as much. But, our goals, for instance, I could say our goals are to elect a Democratic president. That's a crazy goal because we do not have enough control over that outcome. But what we can control is we have more control over how many people sign up, how many people take action, how many people donate to us. So that is what I try to focus on, reasonably what I have control over. And, specific to this moment we're in, before yesterday, it was, I will say our grassroots donation numbers were looking good, but getting volunteers to sign up was hard. In 2020, the numbers were through the roof, and we didn't even have to do much. People were just ready. And this year, people who were not excited about Joe Biden, we were trying to figure out how we get them to, even if they're not excited, still do something. Again, that's not even fully under our control, but just figuring out what you can do. And even though the goal was how do we get more people in? The most we can do is come up with a plan and execute it. And that is what we can control. And so that's what I try to focus on.
That's it for this episode of The Anxious Achiever. The show is produced and edited by Mary Dew, with production support and sound engineering by Nick Krinko. If you like what you heard, head to your favorite podcast app. Leave us a review. It really matters, and we appreciate the time and effort it takes. And if you don't subscribe or follow the show already, now's the time. And let us know what you'd like to hear more of. I get some of my best ideas from my listeners, so find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. You can find my weekly newsletter there as well. A big thanks to LinkedIn and all the listeners out there and our guests in the Anxious Achiever world. Until next time.